Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So my name is Paaras Kaur, and I've been invited to speak about health, some forms of health, some parts of health, and I had a hard time coming up with a topic that would be very relevant in terms of Sikhi. You can argue that, like your physical, but it doesn't really matter. In Sikhi, it's all about Bani, and it's all about, like spirituality. There's actually a bit of a balance between our mind, our body, and our soul. A balance of all three of those things. So then I came up with a topic of mindful health, whatever that means. And these are kind of some of the things that I want to talk about. But before we start, I wanted to say I'm not, like I've said this before, I'm not a speaker, I'm not a pracharak. I don't do Gurmat prachar. I just, we all have our strengths. Gyani ji was saying yesterday that, our panth is made up of people that have different strengths to offer it, and makes up the whole of our panth. I'm not a pracharak, my brother took that role. I've been asked to come here. I was going to come here as a camper. That was my goal, but then Benji was requesting that I come as a speaker, and I figured since I'm coming anyways, might as well take some of what Guru Sahib has given me in terms of knowledge through the medical field and try to help apply it in terms of Sikhi and kind of present it to you. And then if there's anything that relates to you, anything that you like, anything that's good, take it with you. If not, just leave it here. Gyani ji even said yesterday, when you come into Darbar, leave one Ogun and take one Gun with you. Try to do that in every scenario in our life, every situation that we're in. Just like in this lecture and every other lecture that you're going to go into. So instead of getting fired up about things you don't agree with, just take what you agree with and then be okay with that. So the first thing I want to talk about is historical references. Because there is historical reference. Our Guru Sahibs all practiced and preached. They all showed us what needed to be done, and then here, now apply this into your lifestyle. So we do have some historical references towards health and fitness and mind, body, soul, and that whole concept. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about some perspectives on what mind and body are in terms of a cultural perspective of what our generation understands it as and what the previous generation understood it as. Then we'll talk about diet and lifestyle induced nutritional deficiencies, so things that you don't even know you're depleting yourselves of, which can then cause implications of disease, of the mind-body kind of diseases. And then we'll talk about mental health, something I'm very passionate in, and it's, I would say, 3/4 of my practice. And it's a very challenging field to treat of patients, but it's also the most rewarding, and it's, there are a lot of things that can be done from a very holistic perspective. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and hopefully I only made it to the 4th bullet in the last presentation, so hopefully make it a little bit further in this one. And then I want to talk about what it means to be Tyar Bar Tyar, and I want to share a personal story with you there. And then we'll wrap it up with kind of what our role in the Panth is and our duty with respect to our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So as a disclaimer, so I am a licensed naturopathic physician, but I won't be making any medical recommendations. I won't be telling you doses. So if you have any questions about, do you think I should take this? How much should I take? I probably won't help you just because I don't think I could help you. The most I'd be able to help you just by answering that one question. And I think the person that would be able to help you most is someone who sits down with you and understands your whole case and your whole picture. By you asking me one question is like looking at a big picture and looking at the small part of this picture, and I won't see that whole picture, and then just making a recommendation wouldn't really help you either. So not to be rude, but I probably won't answer anything that you ask about health. All right. So I wanted to talk about Gurdwara Mal Akhada Sahib. So this is the birthplace of Sri Guru Angad Dev Ji. This is the birthplace of many things that happened. So the birthplace of our Gurmukhi script, our Gurmukhi Lipi. I always like to see things from Sakhiyan and kind of expand the purpose and the meaning of everything, because Guru Sahib is so beyond. Everything had a larger purpose. It wasn't just to create a visual language to then write Gurmukhi in. It was much more than that. When I was in, I don't remember what year of the 10 years, but when I was at UWO, I was taking a linguistics class, and I was teaching just through the SSA. I was teaching Punjabi classes, but I took the Gurmukhi kind of layout, and I took it to my linguistics prof, and I said, what do you think about this? And they said, this is amazing. Structurally, it just makes so much sense, the sounds and the movement of the sounds, where your tongue hits your mouth as you move across this way and as you move down. It structurally makes so much sense. There's so much clarity in this script. And Guru Sahib first created the Gurmukhi Lipi. And even if you go to Gurdwara Mala Akhada Sahib now, I think I think I've been to Punjab. I've been to Punjab once for 2 weeks when I was 13. Don't have very many memories of that. But my brother tells me that there's a Gurmukhi script written on the wall where it was first introduced. And to me, what that means, it was creating something new, and it was releasing all the languages that were and the scripts that are available, kind of brushing off the inequality and the other cultural nuances associated with that, and was creating something fresh with structure, to give you structure of thought, to give you focus in when you're reading Gurmukhi. And even the characters are so structured. There's a lot of structure in the Gurmukhi Lipi itself. And that was essentially the beginning of nourishing the mind, and the importance of nourishing the mind and giving focus to your thoughts and creating structure around that. A lot of the mental health things that I'm going to talk about, oops, supposed to be at work right now. Did that show up on there? Oh no, it didn't. Okay. There's an alert here saying that you're supposed to be at work. But so speaking about, like abolishing the caste system, creating an egalitarian religion, and all of that needed to happen with starting of something new, and that's what kind of happened at Khadur Sahib then. And in the vicinity, what also was happening was Guru Angad Dev Ji started encouraging the name of the Gurdwara, Mal Akhada. Mal means wrestler, Akhada means arena. Encouraging people to step into their arena and wrestle and get physically fit, and then also just kind of mentally preparing you that you need to go into this world and be able to fight and survive for yourself, for your panth, as kind of a bigger picture. But at the time, and then also giving you the importance of your physical fitness. You need to be able to be strong enough to channel your Biras into something functional, which is just an extension of your Shantras. I love the duality of it. There's Miri and Piri, there's the Shantras, there's the Biras. There's, in Chinese medicine, you can break it down even further into yin and yang. And it's very much, and then even physiology, you bring into physiology, you can branch the nervous system into your sympathetic nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system, and they're all the same thing. And essentially you need to create and find a middle ground so you can activate either one whenever you need to. And as Gursikhs, we have this duty to be that warrior, whichever way that Guru Sahib has given you the strength to be in any situation you need to be in, but also be practicing the spirituality to be able to know how to use that strength that you have. So talking a little bit about our nervous system, so our nervous system is branched into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is our innate ability to fight or flight, to be ready, to just go. If you're to just walk into an arena and say, okay, yeah, let's fight. Yeah, punch me. Okay, I'll punch you too. That's not really an intense fight, right? So the purpose of that was the intensity, the adrenaline. Sympathetic nervous system is that adrenaline state. Your pupils are dilated so you get light in, so you know where you're going. Your blood is shunted away from your digestive organs into your muscles, so your muscles are fully activated. Proprioceptively, you know where you are in space and where you're going. Blood flow is high to those muscles. And then on the other spectrum, there's a parasympathetic nervous system. Rest and digest, all the blood is shunted inwards. you're in a meditative state. All the energy is kind of channeled into your middle through your vagus nerve, is fully activated. And that's a lot of people that practice yoga and yoga mat and whatnot. They say that their chakras are in line when they're meditating and they're doing yoga, and that's being in parasympathetic mode. So we need to be able to do both in this dunya. We need to be that kamal on top of the gandh, right? We need to be able to jump in there and fight, and then we also need to sit on top and meditate, right? So in society now, unfortunately, we don't have that fear that the Mughals are going to come get us, that we need to defend our panth, that we need to do this now, we need to protect ourselves. So that sympathetic nervous system, it's dysfunctional. We don't have that, I need to go train, I need to make sure I'm physically fit, pata nahi galda ki hona, meri lod paugi, right? We don't think that way anymore because we don't have that fear. We're in first world now, right? So what we use that nervous system for now is like, mere final exam hone hai, I have to go pick up the kids, grocery leoni hai, khana banauna, aa karna, and you're using that nervous system but dysfunctionally. So you're not optimally utilizing it for what it's actually innately and intuitively made for. And what that's doing is, because we're stuck in it all the time, our body's forgetting how to go into parasympathetic nervous system. So we're not knowing how to meditate and be mindful, because when we try, our mind is always wandering because our blood flow isn't shunted inwards like it's supposed to be in that meditative state. So Guru Sahib showed us that, through wrestling and then also Sangat, the Sangat there, and then in the vicinity of Gurdwara Mala Khara Sahib, there was Mata Kivi ji who created langar, right? So that Pangat was created as well. And then also, you have this strength to fight. You may be a really good fighter, but you're all equal at this level here. So that all happened in the same vicinity. So much richness, so much history in just that one, in that one area of Khadur Sahib. Has anyone here been to the city of Khadur Sahib? No? You have? Really? When did you go? Did you see where the Gurmukhi script was up? Yeah? It's pretty cool. That's really cool. Well, hopefully I'll get to do darshan one day. But also, through the langar that Mata Kivi ji made, the importance of pyar naal langar banauna, apne hathan naal banauna, nourishing using whole grains and whole foods to make it. There's so much you can take just from the langar and the pangat itself. So that was, I think that's all I wanted to say about that. But I think the most important thing was just knowing that we need to be able to find a balance between Biras, Shantras, and knowing how to chant, and just recognize if you aren't able to man nahi lagda, then you are stuck in the other side, and you need to work on that and ask the Gurmukhs around you, like, all the Vidvans here, how do I get into that spiritual state? Mera man nahi lagda. Admit when there's something off. Admit when there's an imbalance. Seek help on the physical level, on the mental level, on the spiritual level. We have so many heroes in our panth still that we can look to, and there's like a concentration of them at this camp right now, which is so amazing. So definitely be mindful of that, and try to recognize that in your own jivan, how we can get better, because we're not only getting better for ourselves, we're a part of a collective. When we took Amrit, we became a part of a collective, and then we need to make sure, look out for the best benefit of that collective, and that's our panth, right? All right, so moving on to health. What is health? How would you define health? So if you were to say, I feel I'm healthy when?
You have like a good balance of food, exercise, and you maintain that food, and you're making sure that you have the five like fruits and vegetables, and you have that balanced diet and exercise.
Okay.
That's what I would define as being healthy.
Yeah. What do you think is healthy? So generally, is that the consensus? Everyone usually thinks it's eating and fitness. Sorry? What's that?
Coffee.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I think it's so. What do your parents think is healthy? Roti. But what like say that your parents saw you, they say tu healthy nahi lagda. What would it be about you that doesn't look healthy, or what would it be about you that looks healthy?
Me in particular?
You or anyone else?
I guess my mom always says I'm too pale. In terms of appearance, I'm too pale.
Yeah.
I have a yellowish tinge.
Rang nahi hega gallan ch.
Yeah, blood in you.
Yeah. I'm like, well, if I didn't have any blood in me, I wouldn't be here. But essentially it was like lal chehra, but full face. I hath karke takade sige sehat vadiya si ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ I hath karke. So referring to someone who eats a lot and is in a good state, I think, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, I think health is finding a balance of fitness, of mental wellness, and spiritual wellness. I don't think there's we should give preference to any over the other. If we have optimal spiritual health, the others you'll be mindful of wanting to maintain yourself. There'll be a want to think twice before what you put in your mouth. Think twice what you listen to. That's all your health. Your health is what you're exposed to in society, what you're subconsciously absorbing, and which values you've made out of those things you're absorbing, which things you choose to kick out. I think a combination of all those things is health. And I think our focus really is health and fitness. And I mean, when people see me, that's all they think. But I do give emphasis to those. But the story I share with you at the end will kind of tell you why I put so much emphasis into my physical health. But at the same time, I understand the importance of, and I don't share with too many people, that I do put emphasis into my spiritual health, and I do put emphasis into my mental and emotional health, which is all just as important. But I know my mom, because I don't have very much tissue on my face, thinks I'm very unhealthy. And I think that comes from a more cultural approach of raj ke khao. When you go to someone, ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਘਰੇ ਗਏ ਹੁੰਨੇ ਆ ਆਪਾਂ ਖਾਣ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਣਗੇ ਫਿਰ ਹੋਰ ਦੇਣਗੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਰ ਛਕ ਲਓ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਰ ਲੈ ਲਓ ਅੱਧਾ ਹੋਰ ਲੈ ਲਓ ਅੱਧਾ ਹੋਰ ਲੈ ਲਓ ਗੁਲਾਬ ਜਾਮਨ ਹੋਰ ਲੈ ਲਓ and it's always like more than you actually need, and it becomes less Lord Mutabak, right? And it becomes raj ke khao but not Lord Mutabak. What are your needs? What are your wants? What's controlling those things? Our needs are our basic needs of micronutrition, macronutrition, spiritual nutrition, right? And do we really need all that excess? So I think that's where that comes from. And then there's Manaji says, Baba hor khana khusi khwar, jit khada tan pidiya man mein chale vikar. If you eat that excess, it'll throw your balance off. If you excessively binge watch Netflix, it'll throw your balance off. If you excessively do anything, it'll throw your balance off, right? So Guru Maharaji tells us that. So we need to become more in tune with what our body actually needs. When your mouth is dry, know that your body needs fluids. When you're feeling anxious, just know you need to sit down and do some simran and be mindful. If you're, craving salt, you're not craving French fries, you're craving electrolytes or maybe some carbohydrates if you become deficient in the last couple of hours. Be mindful of what your body actually needs, as opposed to what we want. There's a few deficiencies that there are cravings. There's a magnesium deficiency, and amongst the naturopathic community, it's always frowned upon when people say, oh, I need chocolate, I crave chocolate all the time. No, you're actually craving magnesium, because chocolate is rich in magnesium, and that's where those cravings come from. If you're craving white chocolate, then that's just sugar. You just want sugar. So I can talk about hours and hours about culturally how we went from this society of fit, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually capable warriors to kind of a first world, more modified, sympathetically dysfunctional, metabolic syndrome, diseased, more obese, less physically capable, and less mentally, emotionally capable, like 6 in North America. Actually, it's actually quite sad when you think about it. But the temporal power that was laid out to us included being physically fit. And it was a very, very important part because ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਪਊਗੀ, not to defend yourself, ਕਿਸੇ ਗਵਾਂਢੀ ਨੂੰ help ਕਰਨ ਲਈ, right? We don't know when that's going to happen. And then you need that spiritual power to keep the our 5 evils at bay so you can utilize that energy efficiently and appropriately. I think a large part in my practice is teaching people how to eat, when to eat, and why to eat what they're eating, because we are so not in touch with what our needs actually are. And I think a lot of that becomes with our mind separating from our body. We have this like mind is not brain. So some people think our mind is our brain. Our mind is not our brain. Our brain is just a computer system, just processing sensory information all the time, knowing that there's a draft coming from there, seeing the colors of your chunni, feeling the temperature in here. That my brain is doing that. My mind is not doing that. My mind is making me aware of it when I'm focusing on it. But the actual mind is the connection between the mind and the body is our spirituality. That's what brings them together. Once those things are together, then there's full balance on all levels. And Guru Maharaj says, "Des chod pardes hai aaya, panch chandal nale le aaya." So des chod. So when our mind leaves the body, once it leaves the country, that's like when there's so much disease and so much imbalance, and things will happen to your body because you're not paying attention to it. You've left the field, right? All right, what's a nutrient? So there's 2 kind of nutrients, basic physical nutrients. There's macronutrients, there's micronutrients. Macronutrients are your fats, your proteins, and your carbohydrates. Micronutrients are every vitamin and mineral in the book. Macronutrients are important. Our fats make up our neurotransmitting signals. It's our hormones, cell-to-cell signaling. It's all very important. Carbohydrates are a quick use metabolic energy for fuel. Our brain it relies primarily on carbohydrates and breaking down into simple carbohydrates to use it. And then protein. So protein is so important just because of the amino acids. And those amino acids I'll talk later about in our in the slide about mental health, because the amino acids are one I don't think we get enough of in our diet because of the way we eat, and one is that we become deficient in micronutrients to take those amino acids and utilize them and make neurotransmitters. So that's one of the major things that I'm seeing in practice. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So how do you become deficient? How do you become deficient? How do I become deficient in vitamin C? How do deficiencies, and when do deficiencies start? Do you think you're deficient in anything? Are there any vitamins you think that are not enough in your body? So essentially they start even before you were conceived. I mean, if your mom had any nutritional deficiencies, that would translate to epigenetically how you were formed in the womb, and then what was available to you in the womb. What your mom's experiences were during gestation, during pregnancy with you, determines your health outcome. I remember 7 years ago I went to this conference, and it was this new revolutionary concept that 10% of our DNA is actual information, but 90% is junk. But of that junk DNA, there is a certain part that can be activated through certain activity. And if that activity is done during gestation, then the child won't have cardiovascular disease. So that connection was made 7 years ago. Now they're starting to realize that, oh, no, it's much more expansive. People that end up meditating for hours and hours and hours have the access to that 90% of the DNA that's junk DNA and can turn off, turn on, turn off, turn on anything they want. They can control tumor necrosis factor. They can break down tumors in a day. They're like, this is a medical miracle. But no, it's just the spiritual health in line with the mental health, in line with the physical health. It's just a balance of all those things. And science is slowly starting to catch up at some point. So if you're, just as an example, if your mom had a very stressful event in pregnancy, say she got into a car accident, or she heard that, you know, somebody really close in your family died, her stress hormone will shoot up really, really high. And what that's going to do is it's going to influence the number of insulin receptors and the number of serotonin receptors that your body is capable of making. So when you're born, you're a healthy baby, you look like a healthy baby, you're nursed and a healthy diet, everything. Elementary school, say something happens, say, your parents split up or something happens, or you have to change schools, a stressful event happens, that child who's normally super healthy automatically starts getting panic attacks or automatically slips into depression. They're like, ਚੰਗੇ ਭਲੇ ਸੀ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਦੇ ਹੱਥ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਾਇਆ, ਆਪਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਦੇ ਕੁੱਟਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ, ਆਪਾਂ ਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ, ਨਿਆਣੇ ਦੀ healthy ਸੀ, ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਪਿਆਰ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਸੀ, ਨਿਆਣੇ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ? Well, it wasn't that situation. That was just that the glass just overflowed because this is what was set up for that child during gestation. So there's a lot of things I can talk about, stuff like that for forever, but let's try to move on. So what, I mean, why is it important? So what if you're deficient in something like magnesium or B vitamins? How does that really play part in our ability to focus and be mindful? How does that have anything to do with spirituality? So magnesium has over 325 functions in our body. This is just one example. And magnesium is a mineral. In our culture, dod is like, it's like revered. So ye dod nahi peende, tusi peende ki hai, you know what I mean? So dairy is very, very big. And back in India, I mean, it's a very rich source of protein. Majjan da dod, just raw milk, amazing stuff. It has all the enzymes to break down cholesterol. It has all the, systemic enzymes. It has like micronutrients and macronutrients, very, very balanced, good amount of protein and good fats that will never really cause any damage. Here, what we're drinking is not the same thing. This milk will get your cholesterol high. It doesn't have those enzymes. All those enzymes are killed off. It doesn't have those micronutrients. They were filtered out and re-added synthetically. So things are very, very different. But what happened is with that increased kind of push of calcium into your diet, it created a magnesium deficiency. So it's the most common deficiency you see in society is magnesium, because magnesium is a muscle relaxer, calcium is a muscle contractor, and they work in very, very good balance with each other. If there's too much calcium, there'll be less magnesium. So if you're drinking a lot of milk, you can actually just induce a nutritional deficiency. You don't even know you're doing it. Just by eating a certain kind of food, say you're eating a lot of simple carbohydrates, you're inducing vitamin B, all the B vitamin deficiencies, because all the B vitamins are required to use those simple carbohydrates to process them. And if you're flooding your body with them, the B vitamins can't keep up and they're water soluble and you're losing them. So you can actually just induce vitamin deficiencies, and B vitamins and magnesium is just one of the many. So some people say to me, well, okay, I'm deficient. Say I tell them they're deficient in vitamin C. Can't I just eat an orange a day, and won't that make me replete my vitamin C levels? Once you're that low in something, you need therapeutic dosing for a certain period of time to get your levels up. So you do need to speak to someone. But if you ever choose to take any vitamins on your own, which I don't usually even recommend, but if you do, make sure you don't ever take anything long term, because you might actually be doing more harm than good. You might be inducing more deficiencies. So you need to do that under a watchful eye if you do ever choose to. Another thing I want you to be wary of, and this may sound silly, but of health fads, social media is horrible for creating health fads. People telling you to go on juice cleanses, to do apple cider vinegar in the morning, and everyone wants to do it because everyone's looking for that quick fix. But we're very complex. We're the 5 people sitting at this table. Each of you, if you all came in and said, I have high blood pressure, you would have completely different treatments because your constitution's different than yours, and your lifestyles are different, your demands are different. Everything is individualized. We're all very, very distinct individuals that have different requirements. So the health fads are, try to avoid them as much as possible. Be accountable to your health. If you know that there's something wrong, don't look for a quick fix. Try to find a solution. I'll give you an example. So my mom will listen to my neighbor's advice before she listens to any medical advice I ever give her. So she was watching Katha, I think it was from Malton Gurdwara Sahib, and she heard someone in Katha say, "Be savere har roj adrak da pani, nimbu da ras, te shahat ਘੋਲ ਕੇ ਇੰਨਾ ਕੁ ਚਮਚਾ ਸਵੇਰੇ ਲਿਓ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੈਂਸਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਜੋੜ ਠੀਕ ਹੋ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਲੱਡ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਰ ਠੀਕ ਹੋ ਜਾਊਗਾ." ਐਂਡ ਸ਼ੀ ਇਜ਼ ਲਾਈਕ, ਮੈਂ 5 ਦਿਨ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਲੈਂਦੀ ਨੂੰ, ਮੇਰੇ ਸਿਰ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਹੀ ਹੋਈ ਜਾਂਦਾ. I'm like, okay, mama. I'm like, I'm not her doctor, but there's something to be said. Remember earlier how I was talking about yin and yang, that concept of cold and hot. So yin, everything can be broken down into yin and yang. Yin is cold, yang is hot. Yin is substance, yang is energy. And every disease can be broken down into yin and yang. Even our energies we can break down into yin and yang. Some people are more yang. We all know that one person who has a short fuse, that person just has a really, really yang constitution. And there's other people that are just so cold all the time, you touch them and they're freezing. They have a very yin constitution. So if I told everyone on the, in Sangat to have ginger, honey, and lemon, if we look at the constitution of ginger is very, very yang. Honey is very, very yang, very garam. In Punjabi, in Ayurvedic mat, we say garam, right? If we give something garam to someone who's already garam, what's going to happen? It'll exacerbate their condition. Their hypertension will get worse. Their ulcer will get worse. Even their fuse will get shorter. So those are things that you want to be a little bit mindful. That's just an example of how individualized medicine is, and not to generalize anything. One major issue that we're having, and this is to kind of continue on with that concept of the dairy that I was talking about, is absorption. Even though you have a clean diet, and I'll often hear Punjabi patients tell me, "मैं तो वधिया खानी, सवेरे दलिया, दोपहर नूं प्रशादा, रात नूं प्रशादा, घरे बनदा सारा कुछ, मैनूं तां भी इन्नी कमजोरी आ." And I'll say, it's not you, it's the foods that you have eaten that have caused, or the stress that you're having, that's caused a state of inflammation in your intestines. Our intestines, our mental health, our immune health, our endocrine health, our cardiovascular health. 90% of our serotonin that our brain responds to make us happy is made in our stomach. So if there's any gadbad in this area, that's bad news, because you're not going to be absorbing nutrients. You're going to create major deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies that are going to affect all those levels. And then will you, in that state of deficiency, be able to practice mindfulness? Most likely not. So it's super, super important to make sure that you don't have inflammatory foods in your diet. Inflammatory foods are like fried foods, sugary foods, dairy, soy, peanuts, bananas. Those are all very inflammatory foods that make up majority of our diet. So just be mindful of that. All right, so suboptimal physical functioning. So that's going on with, inability to then focus and be mindful. What is the number one thing you wish your body had the ability to do more? What would you like more of? Energy. Exactly. That's the first thing every patient I see will come in asking. Their first chief concern is, I want more energy. We want to be the Energizer Bunny. We want to be able to work fully, functionally, efficiently through the work days, right? That's our goal, because society has created us for that, created that for us. We are not created for that. Our bodies aren't made to work 12-hour night shifts. Our body's not made to work 10-hour days with optimal efficiency. European countries and other countries, southern countries, have figured out that siesta is something that increases productivity. So let people take a nap in the afternoon, because it's hard for them to work that long, and you're not really getting as much output. But that's because if you're to create this line, and you wake up at this time in the morning and you go to sleep right here. When you wake up in the morning, that sympathetic nervous system I was talking about shoots your adrenaline up. That's what wakes you up. That's what opens your eyes in the morning and makes you jump out of bed. So with that, what happens is an increase in our endocrine function. So your thyroid is so functional in the morning. You could have this ginormous breakfast and take all the vitamins and nutrients from it and make use of it. Halfway through the day, that adrenaline kind of starts to slow down and comes to half. So our needs, our physical needs, are half of what they were when we woke up in the morning. And at bedtime, if all goes well, and that's down here, that's perfect, because now the hormone that opposes that is melatonin. That can surge. Then you can get a nice restful sleep, so you can start all over again the next day. That's the circadian rhythm our bodies are made with. That's what we were born with. That's not exactly what's happening anymore, because we've created this dysfunctional sympathetic nervous system where we're just running around in stresses all the time, where cortisol is just up here all the time, and this melatonin surge in most people doesn't even happen. So they have a restless sleep, hard time falling asleep, wake up feeling unrefreshed. But with that, the suboptimal body functioning is because you've used so many of your reserves throughout the day, because your sympathetic nervous system was so high throughout the day, and that doesn't last long. I mean, you stay in that state long enough, you run out of vitamin C, through which the adrenaline, the cortisol is made, and then you crash. Then you get a system failure like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, autoimmune disease, and complete shutdown. And I see this in clinic in women in their 50s, because they've burnt themselves out with their kids being the center of the family, doing everything for everyone, and they have nothing left. And they're asking me to fix everything. And it's so hard to fix once you get it to crash and burn. It's so hard to fix after that. So with that state of adrenal exhaustion, you'll also get things like one of the biggest problems in our society, metabolic syndrome. You'll get something, metabolic syndrome is just essentially the combination of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and dysglycemia, so unbalanced blood sugar. So essentially that triad is probably every auntie and uncle you know, who's on that cholesterol pill, who's on that blood sugar pill, who's on that hypertensive pill, antihypertensive pill. And unfortunately now health is defined as the people that are on the limited number of medications in our society anyways. But that happens because when our cortisol is so high when we're sleeping, we think we're running from a tiger when we're sleeping, and we're not, because we haven't eaten at nighttime when we're sleeping. Our blood sugar is relatively low. So what our liver starts doing, it starts making sugar. And when it starts making sugar, there's nowhere to go, so it just kind of absorbs and just kind of settles in this area. And so a lot of people start, at the beginning of crash and burn, start complaining about abdominal obesity. And with that, you get decreased insulin sensitivity. So it's kind of come together, and you get things like fatty liver as well. Fatty liver used to be a disease of alcoholics. Now it's become a disease of vegetarians who are really stressed out. It's really sad. I've seen the shift in just the number of years that I've been practicing. So Mataji has created this complex organism. So I always see all of our cells as being a complex organism within the whole organism, and we're made up of these organs which are made up of cells which are functioning within themselves, and we're functioning within a society within our country, a country within the world, and then the world itself is this ginormous organism. So I mean, we've been given all of our all of the tools to create this, to keep this vessel functioning. We just need to give it its basic needs. And that basic needs will happen when we, remember the three things kind of come together. We become mindful of what we're eating, what we're doing, what we're listening to, when we're doing it, how long we're doing it for. So some other nutritional deficiencies that I see in our community, vitamin D, and you're gonna laugh at this, but this is the number one reason for vitamin D deficiency in our community is because we wanna look fair. We don't wanna be in the sun. Apna rang na kala ho jave. How many of you grew up saying, "To pichna wala khedi rang kala ho ju"? I did. I know my mom, if she saw me playing in the sun, and I loved, I was a hippie, I wanted to be barefoot outside all the time. She's like, "Tere na kisne vyah nahi karona. Tera rang kala ho jana. Siyala nu vyah karavange." Like that's a horrible, horrible thing. But with that, not only is that creating this horrible insecurity, but it's also creating this vitamin D deficiency in a child who needs it during growth, right? So that's one of the reasons. High salt intake actually skews your magnesium and your calcium balance, and then you can't make use of that vitamin D and convert it into the active form. There are a lot of drugs that do the same thing. And a lot of the common drugs that people are on, like antihypertensive medication. So the second most common deficiency that I see is iron deficiency anemia. How many of us know someone with low iron? A lot of people have low iron. It's a very common thing. Funny thing is that, well, it's not funny, but vitamin D is very much related to iron. So if you're low in vitamin D, you can take as much iron as you want, but you won't see your iron levels go up until your vitamin D status is brought up first. So you kind of need to do both. But the importance of that, so I mean, if you're low in iron and you need to run and save yourself from someone who's trying to mug you, you'll be able to run maybe 100 meters before your muscles deoxygenate completely. Super, super important to have your iron levels up. A lot of things contribute to iron deficiency anemia. I know I love Sarblo. I have this complete obsession with Sarblo, but my non-sick friends used to say, "Why do you wear such a big kada?" This is my smaller one, but I say this is my iron detecting device. So when I'm low in iron, it'll stain my skin and I'll get black pits that kind of go into, and the iron tries to absorb into my skin. But when my iron levels are normal and I get my iron tested every 3 months, it doesn't do that. So this is like my gauge of how much iron is in my body. Yeah.
So when it stains, that means you're low in iron?
So staining itself can just mean that you were really humid and sweaty. That might just be that. But have you ever had the pits, the little black?
Maybe once, I think.
Yeah. So the pits mean that your skin is actively absorbing the iron. The staining is just oxidation of the iron on the outside of your skin. So the pits themselves are a great indicator, and you'll see, and if you ever see any Singani who has like a lot of little scars from pits, that the little black dots that went in from the kada, that's iron deficiency anemia. But what they do in third world countries, I remember I had an argument when I was in final year of medical school in a nutrition class. My professor said that every vegetarian will always be iron deficient, no matter what, you need to give them iron injections. And if you think you can prove me wrong, prove me wrong. So at break, I went to the library, started looking up studies, because I got to prove this guy wrong because he's bashing vegetarianism. And what I saw was that the rates of, no, it was absorption. He said vegetarians won't absorb iron unless they have some form of meat. It has to be a heme-based iron to absorb it. And so I went and looked up cast iron and the use of cast iron in third world countries. And back then it was very new, but what they were doing is they were replacing, in like Africa, they were replacing aluminum pots with cast iron pots, and they saw that just their iron status went up and their health status went up just with that change. So they started making very recently, I don't know if you heard of the iron fish. So it's a fish shape made out of cast iron that they tell you to put into your pots when you cook to get your iron status up. But I'm thinking, Guru Maharaji gave us gorti of sarblo when we take amrit in a sarblo bata. That's our sarblo. That's what we're not getting enough of in our diet. If you're cooking in it, where's that deficiency? It shouldn't be happening. If you're optimally absorbing everything, there's no inflammation. If you're cooking your food in sarblo, you should be getting the adequate amount of iron you need. And that's actually scientifically research-based medicine. Not that I think that's a be-all, end-all, but that's definitely something that has been looked at. All right, nutritional deficiencies and mental health. So we talked about amino acids before. One thing I want to just mention, just culturally, is that when we hear of someone, I don't know if your parents ever talk about someone and they're going through depression, they'll say, "Oda damag kharab ho gaya." They'll say, "Kharab ho gaya." Like, how does the damag get kharab? It means there's an imbalance. Like, what is that? That creates such a negative connotation with mental health that it's irreparable. That machine is broken. Although in changa bhala si, sehat vadiya si, healthy si, par pata nahi dimag nu kuch ho gaya. Well, I'll hear that a lot from, I guess I'm older, but my mom's generation, they talk like that, and they still do it. As much as it frustrates me and I jump in and try to change it. Hopefully it changes for our generation. But when there's a family member or someone in our community that is struggling with OCD, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, postpartum depression, anything, they tend to isolate themselves because they know our community is not going to accept it and understand it or help you with it. It's so important to have the emotional support. I shared this example with the last group, but on the Saturday before camp started, so just this past Saturday, I had a patient who's an uncle in his maybe late 80s, and he came in because he was getting tremors. His hands were tremoring. Very nice guy. He just came from India just a couple of months ago. I think he served as like a judge and a lawyer in India. Very well educated. And I always, in my intakes are 1 hour long. I investigate all aspects of health, including social health and childhood. And I was like, "Uncle ji, soda bachman kiਵੇਂ ਸੀ?" And he laughed. He's like, "Bachman ਬਾਰੇ ਕਾਹਤੇ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਆ?" I was like, "ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੁਝ ਬਚਪਨ 'ਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸਿਹਤ ਤੇ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ." And he's like, "ਮੇਰੀ ਮਾਂ ਮਰ ਗਈ ਸੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ 13 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੀ." And then he's kind of fighting tears, and I was like, ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕੋਈ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਹੈਗੀ ਸੀ? ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਸੀ ਜੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਦਾਸ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ? And he's just shook his head, and he's quite upset. And then I was like, ਹੋਰ ਕੁਛ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਬਚਪਨ 'ਚ? And he's like, ਬਚਪਨ 'ਚ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ, ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ 25 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਦੋਂ 6 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਲਈ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਟੌਰਚਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ. Like, he was very tortured. Not, I don't remember the actual age, but he was in middle aged when he got tortured, severely tortured for 6 years. And I was like, I was like, what about then? Odon ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਕੀ support ਸੀ, system ਸੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਸੀ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਅੰਦਰੋਂ ਅੰਦਰਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ? And he just burst out crying, and he cried for half an hour. He's like, nobody's ever asked me that before. I've never talked about my torture with anyone. I've never talked about how horrible my childhood was because I didn't have a mom and my dad didn't remarry. I'd never discussed that with anyone. This is a gentleman in his 80s who's telling me this, which is so unfortunate. He appreciated talking about it, and I got a thappi on the back because he appreciated that I asked him, and I let him know that obviously, you're safe talking about it here, but how wonderful would it be that he could talk to his neighbor about that without feeling embarrassed, that, it's almost a sign of lack of strength to be able to not talk about it. To talk about it is considered a weakness. That kind of needs to be shifted, I feel like, and I feel like our generation can do that by taking words out of our language like, oh, that's mental, or that person's retarded, or things like that. Words like that that carry so much negative kind of baggage with it. Just remove that from your diet, from your vocabulary. Become open-minded. Recognize if your friend is looking down. say, listen, I heard there's a really good naturopathic doctor in Surrey. No, I'm just kidding. Just recognize and know how to take them for help. Like maybe I'll come with you if you don't want to talk to me about it. I really care about you and I'm really concerned. And if it's a Gorsik, say, you're part of our Panth, you could be that Hira that 20 years from now that's going to save us. I don't know. You're going to contribute something to this Panth that's going to affect me. And if you're feeling this way, I want to help you. Think of it that way, and that's the only way we'll start thinking about it, if we think about everyone as our brother or sister or someone we care about so much. The other thing I wanted to say about that, the biggest thing that creates mental health is a disconnect of the mind from the body. It's this unawareness and unable to figure out and identify where the sadness is coming from, why you have this anxiety. It's this disconnect. And there's one patient I had the most trouble with helping her with her depression, and it was just me asking a question over and over again, and I'm like, and why does that matter? And why does that matter? And how does that impact you? And at the end of it, she just said, I don't know. I think maybe I'm just not myself. I'm just not in myself, she said. I'm just not in myself. And then that was her connect. And then things started to change after. Her perspective started to change. And that perspective starts to change when you realize that you're not mindful, that spiritual health isn't there, and you've neglected that spiritual health and focused only on the physical health, and the mental health has gone down. The spiritual health went down, physical health will go down too. Mental health, remember we were talking about gut, the mental health, immune health, cardiovascular health, all of that's right here in our middle. It's in our center, it's in our core. Nutrition is important. All the amino acids are important. The bioavailability of the proteins we're eating is important. As vegetarians, we need to be sprouting. I think the amino acids our brain needs the most come from sprouted lentils. So does anyone know here, have you heard of sprouting? Yeah, it was done like hundreds of years ago too, but it's essentially just 3 days of sprouting lentils. And when the little sprout comes out, all of a sudden the cysteine, the methionine, the tryptophan, the tyrosine, all of those amino acids your body needs to make right here, needs to make serotonin, needs to make dopamine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, GABA, glycine, all of that will start to be formed. And it's quite significant, and you can't take it orally if there's any kind of inflammation here. I usually have to give my patients IV route of the amino acids to help, and it's a huge immediate impact. How fast their body takes it up, how fast they start making those neurotransmitters, how fast they start feeling better. But it's never just the IV, it's counseling on mindfulness while you're doing the IV to understand that until the mind is not connected with the body, the IVs will just be temporary. It won't be a long-term solution. All right, what else did I want to talk about here? I feel like psychologically when someone gives you a time constraint, all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'll just cut this down, I'll just cut this down. Oh, we do? Okay, okay. I'm sure, I think people are starting to fade too, so I'll cut it down for sure. So the way that the drugs, I'll just mention this because you'll probably know someone at some point who does go in to get medicated for depression. The way the drugs work is they try to use whatever neurotransmitters you have and try to keep them in between the two neurons, the brain cells that communicate with the next brain cell. Try to keep it in the middle there to make sure it has its action potential. It keeps using its function to make you then result in happiness. But the problem is, if you don't have the nutrients and the amino acids to make it, the drugs won't keep it there. So a lot of the times the antidepressant medication doesn't work because you don't have the foundational requirements to make that neurotransmitter. So that's super, super important. So if you hear someone who's depressed and they've taken antidepressants and they're feeling suicidal because they don't feel that the medication is helping them and nothing is going to help them, just tell them, okay, no, we need an alternative route. I don't think you're making what you actually need. So I don't think the drugs are helping you as the best as they could actually be helping you. All right, we'll finish with this one. I think this is a very important. What do you think is tyaar bar tyaar? What's tyaar bar tyaar? What is your definition of tyaar bar tyaar? Anji.
Like literally means ready already, like you're ready to go at all times.
Ready to go at all times, yeah. What's your definition,
Any
sorry?
condition, right? Any condition.
Yeah.
Really healthy, physically, mentally.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually steadfast and ready to go. How many people in your life have you actually met that you think are tyaar bar tyaar? At this camp, there's probably a lot. But outside of this camp, say you were never here before this, there's not too many people that, you know, there may be someone that you heard stories about in recent history, maybe one distant relative or a friend of a friend that really inspires you. But essentially, tyaar bar tyaar, as we talked about earlier, it's that balance between the spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, physical health, and knowing and being fully connected and aware. And so when you're at that state, you know it's not functional to be in parasympathetic mode all the time. That from that shantras, you need to be able to create biras, that you need to be somewhere in the middle, because we're not hermits, we live in this world. You need to work, you need to go to school, you need to take care of your families, you need to do what you're doing. You can't be stuck in either one of those to be doing all that. You need to be in the middle. And I think tyaar bar tyaar is being in the middle, is being able to jump into full-blown sympathetic mode, just like Guru Angad Dev Ji was teaching us at Gurdwara Malakhara, is teaching us that you need to be able to go into fight or flight right away when necessary and make the right decisions, because you have the ability to be in shantras and you know how to overcome the 5 evils when in that state of biras. That's so important, right? I want to share one story with me which changed my perspective on kind of being tyaar bar tyaar. Before then, I think I was focusing a lot more on the parasympathetic, and you know, like it's just, we don't really need to learn Gatka anymore. I mean, that's not really something that, you know, this is a fault of mine. And then we just need to do Paat and Jap Naam, and that's all we need to do, and we don't need to worry about the other things. So I was sitting on the bus, this is in 2009, I was 4 months pregnant, and it was my final year of medical school. It used to take me about an hour, 45 minutes. This is when I used to live in Brampton. I've moved back to Vancouver now, but I used to travel on the GO bus to the what do you call it, the underground?
Subway?
Yes, the subway, to the subway. And 2 stops before the subway was a major mass exodus off the bus, and I used to go to the last stop, and there's usually 1 or 2 of us. So as we were approaching that second last bus stop, it's a full bus, it's rush hour, first thing in the morning. I had my pocket PC out because there were no smartphones then. I was 4 months pregnant, and I was quietly reading Sri Sukhmani Sahib out loud, just to myself. There's no one sitting right next to me because I had my bag there. But the rest of the bus was full. And I didn't realize, because I was in my zone, I was focused on what I was doing. I didn't realize there was a gentleman who came and stood next to me. And I only realized when he took his briefcase and started beating me with it and swearing at me and calling me racist things, trying to take my dastar off and punching me. And at that time, I was in a state of shock, and I just put up my hands and I started screaming, "Stop." Everything happened so fast, I was just disheveled, and he ran off the bus, and the mass exodus started because we approached the bus stop and people started leaving the bus. Not a single person on that bus got up. And it's a bus, it wasn't a public event where you see something happening, and you've probably heard of that zone people go into, I didn't see it, and they walk away. It wasn't that. bus was full. It was right on the bus. It was a big event that took place right in the middle of the bus. Nobody got up, and it was in North York. Everybody was getting off the bus, so I was trying to collect myself, fix my dastar, just kind of realize, clean my face, and just see the damage that's been done. And like I dropped my pocket PC and stuff was everywhere. And then the last person to get off the bus was a Singh. And that's where it just kind of, I just looked at him and he stopped and he said he put some stuff on the back here, the star too. And he had wiped some kind of gel or something on my dastar. And then he walked off and I was just, my jaw just dropped and I just watched him as he kind of left the bus. And the doors closed and then went to the next stop. I was crying, I was emotional. I went up to the bus driver. I'm like, did you see what happened? Why didn't you stop that man? He's like, I can't see everything that goes on the bus back there. And I was obviously shaken. I went to school. I was at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, and the community there was so supportive. They didn't even know what was wrong with me. I got to school and 20 people were hugging me, trying to make me feel better. But I contacted Toronto Police. Nothing ever came of it. But what did come of it was my perspective on what being tyaar bar tyaar. I'm not judging that Singh's decision not to help. He, in his own self, was being helpful and telling me there's something on my almost off the star. But for me, it shifted my perspective on wanting to be physically capable of defending not only myself, but if there's someone else on that bus, and I replay that event in my head all the time, if I was a person, if I was sitting where, what I would have done, how you could have helped, if you could use your words, if you could use, physically yell stop to the bus driver, or what you could have actually done. But I focus on my physical fitness and creating a version of myself that's the most functionally fit to be able to protect myself, my son, anyone around me, any other Gursikh I know, anyone who's not a Gursikh I know. A friend of mine she's Caucasian, she recently had a similar event in a bus, but it was a drunk, intoxicated gentleman who came up to her in her face and was screaming and threatening her, and she felt very threatened. But immediately she called me, and I was in a completely different city at the time, but I wasn't able to be there. But immediately my body went into a state of sympathetic nervous system, knowing that I canceled my patients, left the city to go and fix and help the situation, find out who it was, how it affected her, help her figure out if the bus system, if there were any witnesses, figure out, we need to be proactive and capable. We can't be passive Sikhs. This isn't the generation of passive Sikhi. We need to be capable physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I think finding our balance is going to be different. My strength to this month is going to be different than all of our strengths, as we talked about before. So my hope is that, especially Bibi, I feel culturally get weakened in their role. So we've created GNA Fitness in Surrey to help empower women to take 1 hour of their week for themselves, for self-care, for mental and physical empowerment, to come do the fitness class with me. And it is a very mentally challenging hour that they spend with me. You can ask them. There's a lot of them here today. But I urge all of you to become physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually aware, and then try to help yourselves that way, because then you will be contributing to the Panth by being so. All right, if I've made any mistakes, please forgive me. I'm not a speaker, I'm not a pracharak, I just talk from my own matbud. So please take anything good that you've heard, and if anything negative, please leave it behind. And I can definitely take some questions now if you guys have any questions.
This might be off topic, but because I'm from the UK, and sometimes when we find items, it says made produced on a line of like a line of egg, and like, when you get those ingredients.
Right,
and stuff.
right.
What would you reckon? Obviously, some people say that obviously because of the producing line you shouldn't eat it, because obviously as good 6 weeks you shouldn't have meat anyway.
Right.
But like sometimes I know that some people do have it anyway Do you kind of get what I mean?
Yeah, so essentially packaging and saying may contain.